blue hand when you're ready, and we'll hear more from you. But
All
thanks
right.
for being
Happy
here.
to.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody to Books and Bars. I'm Jeff Kamin. If you're here for the first time, a couple things to look at. There is an ongoing chat in text that you can access, and oftentimes there's two different conversations going at once. Feel free to engage whichever one you want to. There'll be certain details and information shared in the text, and questions and icebreakers and stuff like that, and some of it will overlap with the video discussion. You just raise your blue hand under your participant button there, and it'll list you in order, and I will unmute you, call on you and unmute you, and then make a comment, ask your question about our book tonight, which is Circe by Madeline Miller. And I usually start with a little bit about the author. I shared some of it in the chat earlier, and I'm going to share it again now as I tell you about her. She, Madeline Miller, currently lives in Cambridge. And let me find my exact, did I share it already, guys? Let me see here. Nope, I didn't yet. So it's coming up in the chat right here, right now. And I would love to see a list of blue hands coming up, because we usually have a pretty full list. And like I said, I want to give everyone a chance. So if you already know that you want to say something, don't wait for me to ask the question. Usually you guys don't even answer what I've asked. You just say what you want to say anyway, which is great, which is the point. You guys read the book and you came here to talk about it. So whatever you're thinking about with the book, don't be afraid to be the one to bring it up, because you're probably not the only one that is wondering about a certain thing or thinking about it. So a lot of this is, you know, not new to our people that have been here many times, but I saw that we had a lot more people signed up than normal. So I'm imagining we might have some other Circe nerds here tonight. So I want to make sure that they have a chance to know how to do it and to get in there. And this is also me stalling as I pull up my about the author thing to share with you guys right now. I got the part about her being living in Cambridge, at least off the top of my head. How about that? That was pretty good, Jeff. But yet no one still raises their hand. And this is the part that but I got Cara. Raise her hand. And Cara, see, you are going to let me find all of my notes to share. And it's an excellent stall tactic, and you're a veteran to kick us off. So I'm asking to unmute you.
Hi, everyone.
Talk to us.
I was thinking about what the kind of god I would be. I think I would be like, you know, a less powerful god. I was thinking I would be the god of the snooze button. And so I would answer the prayers of people who are going just like 5 more minutes, please, 5 more minutes. Because that's what I'm always praying for every morning. So I said 2 weeks ago that I hated this book.
Yes.
Yeah. And I did look back on like what rating I gave it, and I gave it 3 stars.
Okay.
So normally if I hate a book, that's not a high score. So when I immediately finished reading it, I think I had liked it. And I think I had liked it as I was reading it. But then when I thought about it more, it really frustrated me. And like getting into early stuff with like gender and feminism. But I read this book as part of a feminist book club. And I thought it was just an incredibly stupid and bad pick because of that. Like, yes, it's a retelling of, you know, this like old Greek myth that's, you know, not necessarily very pro-women. But the way they retell this one, Circe is just kind of like the exceptional woman. She's better than all of the other women around her. She's in conflict with like every woman she meets. She doesn't like any other woman that she meets. She's like, I'm not like other girls. And then she just jumps from being obsessed with one man to the next. First, it's that Glaucus guy. And then it's first it's her dad. And then it's like Glaucus. I'm going to butcher names. And then it's Odysseus. And then it's like Odysseus's son. And I'm like, where is her power? Like, she only cares about men. She's obsessed with her own son. I just found it so frustrating. And there were so many moments when she came close to maybe forming a relationship with another woman. And then it was just like, no, my sister sucks, actually. All of the nymphs that come to my island, I'm not going to try to get to know any of them. They're annoying. They suck. All of the other goddesses are bad. It was just so frustrating. And then finally you sort of get Penelope at the end, but like there's no real connection there. She just wants to like be in love with her son. I don't know. I just like, the more I thought about it, the more I was kind of like, she never like realizes her power as like a woman. She never like finds solidarity with other women. She's just constantly at odds with every woman she meets. And I just found it incredibly frustrating. And I think I was always waiting for her to like learn, like her main lesson at the end would be like, maybe I shouldn't have been measuring myself by men's standards this whole time. Maybe I could have like, I don't know, realized that I could help other women or something. And then it never happened. So that was my frustration and why I walked away from the book being very annoyed at it.
Well, thank you. Thank you for kicking it off. I think there is a little to her relationship with Penelope. I think that it isn't necessarily, she didn't start off thinking, I just want to hook up with, you know, Penelope's son. I think that grew. And I think Penelope actually, you know, they're wary of each other at first, but then we learn that Penelope wants to be more like her, wants to be more like Circe, and wants to learn from Circe. And I like how she kind of passes on some of it to her in this idea that they want to kind of change places almost. And so I think there's somewhat, I don't know if, I didn't think about this, whether it does pass the Bechdel test when you bring it up about how she doesn't have necessarily the best relationships with other women. I don't know if they're just talking about, you know, male gods or something. Maybe someone else can speak to that. But I feel like,
I mean, it would be like, to pass the Bechdel test is a very fine measure. All they'd have to do are have like 2 lines that are about something else. But like, I do think like from my memories of it, like her conversations with her sister are usually about the brother or the father. She doesn't even talk to like a lot of the other nymphs that she meets. Medea, maybe she has like a conversation with Medea that's not about men, but like, I don't know.
All right.
It's not a good pass.
Okay. And then of course there is the, you know, if you haven't finished it, slight spoiler, but that's what we do here. You know, whether it pans out in her sort of dream, this idea that she ends up with a daughter, you know, I'm hoping that there's, you know, at least there's a woman there that she will hopefully have a good relationship with at some point. If you remember that at the end, I think she dreams of that they would have a daughter together. So, but thank you. And I hope that you, maybe you'll get a different perspective on it tonight. We'll see. But I will
say the writing style is excellent. I do like Madeline Miller as a writer. I really liked her Song of Achilles, which is like the first book I read of hers.
Yes, I've heard good things about it. So Madeline Miller grew up in New York City and Philadelphia. She attended Brown University. She earned her BA and MA in classics. She has taught and tutored Latin, Greek, and Shakespeare to high school students for over 15 years. And I found this really interesting in some of the interviews I read with her. She studied at the University of Chicago's Committee on Social Thought and in the dramaturgy department at Yale School of Drama, where she focused on the adaptation of classical texts to modern forms. So not only had she studied the text of the Odyssey and other mythological poems and tales, but she has actually directed actors saying these words and has, in some ways, breathed a new life into these characters before she even releases these books. And it's taken her many years of research, both of the books, to do. So I see we have a lot of hands now, and I am going to go to Donna here. Donna, can I unmute you and can you talk to us?
Yes, when you said breathes new life, that spoke to me, because I will say about this book that I did kind of wallow in it. I couldn't get enough of Greek myths when I was a teenager. There was something about those stories that I thought were just absolutely fascinating. And I even took 4 years of Latin just so I could read Ovid's Metamorphoses and the Aeneid in the original Latin, because those stories are similar. And I just thought, oh, there's gods and goddesses and the transformations of these characters and all that was just so fascinating. So coming to this, I found it absolutely refreshing to see a new look at a lot of those stories. She wove in all those elements of the Odyssey, of course, because she meets Odysseus, and we know that from the original story. But then even Daedalus and Icarus, and you know, the Theseus and the Minotaur, and there's Ariadne and Jason and the Argonauts. I mean, there were just so many of those great stories that we had a chance to kind of revisit through her lens in this book. And then by the end, I thought it was magical. I mean, the fact that Penelope and Telemachus came to her island, there was all of that great conversation, I thought, between her and Penelope about, okay, Odysseus, this big hero, but wait a minute, you know, he never was satisfied. He wasn't that great of a guy. And Circe realized, as she had all along, that she had this yearning to be mortal. I mean, she was envious of mortals in so many ways. And so I thought the ending just sang. I thought that final chapter where she embraced the idea that, you know, I have these powers, I'm immortal, but I'm tired of seeing all the people I have come to know and love pass away. I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to go on and be a human. I loved it. So I appreciated Cara's modern look at it a little bit, but I just have to say, for lovers of mythology, this is a fabulous book. So thanks.
Well, thanks, Donna. I love mythology also. I remember I was into like Clash of the Titans, like the old version, the 80s one with Harry Hamlin, that movie. And I was fascinated by the stories in school that we learned. So I actually I liked how she, as I said, breathed new life into it, or kind of fleshed it out in a way. And I love the idea of going into a story that you think you know. And, you know, she's only in a couple chapters of the Odyssey, Circe. And it's really a pretty slim. And I have Odyssey here in a mythology book, and there's only a few pages on Circe in here. And I think it's kind of fun. We're seeing this, there's other examples of it now where authors are taking, you know, the supporting characters or a character that maybe is misunderstood and putting them in a new perspective, a new light, and giving them, you know, their own journey. And making them the main perspective, the main story. So I enjoyed that aspect of it quite a bit. Maybe, I mean, I'd read Song of Achilles actually, and probably other stuff that she would do. So I'm glad that you agree with me on that one. I liked it quite a bit. I see Kevin's got his hand up. Kevin, can I unmute you? Can you talk to us?
Hi, I'm Kevin. If I were a god, I think I would be the god of good vibes. Just chill.
Oh. Nice. You're like a Lebowski or a surfer god. I like it.
Yeah, there you go.
Just the good vibes god.
Mm-hmm. And yeah, I really liked this book. I'm kind of a sucker for that different perspective book, like Grendel or Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and all that stuff.
Yeah.
It was really fun to see sort of the trip through all that Greek mythology that I had heard of before. And then back to the earlier point, it was kind of odd looking back at it that a lot of the sort of unambiguously good characters, the majority of them were men. So like Prometheus, Daedalus, Telegony, something like that, were pretty much, along with Ariadne, were pretty much the only ones who didn't have some sort of mark against them, either currently or like Telemachus in his past, who was very, very bad and ended up being good.
Well, thanks, Kevin. Anyone else that wants to speak on that or anything else they have? I see Caitlin's got her hand up. Caitlin, I'm unmuting you. Can you talk to us?
Yes. So it's interesting thinking about what Cara and Donna have said. I guess I would be the god of making friends with strangers. That would be my superpower. So, which is very awkward for Minnesotans, but I do it anyway. So I really love the writing in this book. And the first time I read it, I gave it 5 stars. And I did not finish my second read of it. I'm like 75% of the way through. And I don't know if I still think of it as 5 stars. I still really like it, but I was noticing that when I was reading it that like, oh, all these, you know, naiads come and live with her, but like none of them have names. Like none of them have any character development. And even just having like 1 or 2 as a token of like one that she developed a relationship with, I think would have added something to the book. Cause it's like, she talks about them only in terms of like them irritating her, and then how they fall in love with Odysseus's men. But even then, there's really no development. And so it's funny, like now that I'm rereading it, I'm like, even though I love her writing and I feel like her writing is very engaging, and I'm glad I'm rereading it, it still feels like, oh, I do wish she would have done a little bit more character development, because I feel like she missed an opportunity there.
All right, that's a similar thought there. Anyone else have an opposing opinion or a similar opinion? Love to hear it, or anything else you got. I see Maggie has her hand up though. So Maggie, I'm unmuting you. Can you talk to us?
Sure. Hi. Considering the times we're living in, I would choose to be a god like Caris. So she was the god of kindness, so you don't have to mask shame people or get irritated with stupidity. Just be kind and don't speak. I loved this book. Like Donna, I was a mythology freak and went to school and was a classics major, 4 years of Greek to 4 years of Latin. And to Cara's point, you know, I don't think there's any way to make these characters apply to the Bechdel test. We're talking early mythology, and Circe herself had a terrible childhood growing up amongst women who did not care about her at all, except for how they could use her. You know, take care of the other children, don't bother me. The only people that had power were the senior men. And I think she threw herself at mortal men because she might have a chance of having some power over them. Because everybody else she had run into in her life, that was not happening. So I've always felt really sad for the minor goddesses and the nymphs, because nobody watched out for them ever.
Well, I felt bad for Circe up top, and I didn't quite understand why everyone in her family was so mean to her and nobody cared for her at all. I just don't, what was it about? Why did they instantly, I mean, she was just like born the black sheep because she sounded different and didn't look quite the same. And so she was like the runt of the litter or something. I mean, if anyone could speak to what it, I guess right from the top, I'm like, wow, like this is, you know, this is your daughter, this is your sister. Why is everyone so hateful of her? I mean, she's, you know, it's just the first, you know, act, the first few chapters, it's just put upon, just, you know, compiles on her how bad it is.
When you start looking at mythology in total, the gods themselves are really very shallow. They're vain, they're self-absorbed, they're all about what's in it for me and how can I get more from the other gods. So it's really like Lord of the Flies, and everybody's just out for themselves. And so there are no good role models, and it cracks me up still, all these years after spending so much time studying them, that why anybody would create these people as gods to emulate or to worship, because they're horrible. They're just not nice.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. What is it about that? Yeah, why would you, if you could, you know, create anyone to look up to or to worship or to fear, why would you make them like this? Yeah, you're right. They're very, you know, they kind of reminds me of, I just thought of this now for some reason, the Smurfs. I don't know, like everyone had like one thing that was their jam. There was like Brainy Smurf. He's a smart one. Vanity Smurf, you know, he kept looking in a mirror. There was Handy Smurf, you know, he could make stuff, but they all had like, and then that was like, there was only like one thing they were good at, except for Papa Smurf. And then Smurfette, because she was the only woman. There's like 100 blue Smurfs and there's one girl Smurf. I don't know where I'm going with this one, but Smurfs, that just came to mind. That's where we're going tonight. Pete O'Grady's got his hand up, and I know that he's going to take us somewhere from Smurf to, I'm asking him to talk to us about it, whatever he's got. Talk to us, Pete.
Okay. Well, thank you for the Smurf update. I haven't learned about them since my daughter was little. Yeah, I think this is, I really like the book, and then I love listening to all the comments, especially Cara's stuff about the, because I'm really fascinated by the feminist perspective of Circe, especially her, you know, the way she has to deal with predator men and turns them into pigs, and I think that power should just be given to women at birth. And but I think what's interesting is all the gods are shallow people, like Maggie was just pointing out. But I think Circe was really interesting because I think she was fated for something, and it's tied to Prometheus. Like Prometheus saw a vision that humans are going to outpower the gods at some point, and Circe sort of jumps in on that, maybe unwittingly, but then I think that's her true strength, and that the gods are actually weak. They don't change. You know, it's sort of like, you know, people who don't understand the shifting sands of stuff under them. And I don't know, I just, I look at it as a tale from her perspective. So I don't quite think of it in terms of whether she was sensitive to others around her. I don't think she was ever born with that. I think she had to work at her capability in that space. And I think she was really all in on, you know, at the final end, the last chapter with that, whether it's a vision or I was looking at it as she saw the future if she drank out of the bowl, and then she drank the bowl. And I'm interested in other opinions on that. But I don't know. I just, you know, it was a harsh set of experiences for lots of people. And I really enjoyed the read. And it's like, I think you really hit it well with the last two books. I think they're excellent book club books because it promotes a variety of opinions. So thank you, Jeff.
Thanks, Pete. I appreciate that. And yeah, we've had some really good discussions lately. So thank you to you guys for taking the chances on these and reading them. I think you bring up a great point, though, and that is, you know, Circe doesn't want this power. She doesn't want to be a witch. She doesn't want to be a god, and she wants to change to be human, and the power that she realizes in living a finite life, in realizing that, you know, you have to use each moment and appreciate the time that you have, as opposed to these gods that are, you know, going to live forever, and time means nothing to them, so they can do anything, and there's no consequences.
I would correct one thing there. I think she really wanted to be a witch. She worked really hard at it, and she saw something in witchcraft that it's almost like, you know, humans and technology and stuff, that she saw something that way more powerful than what the gods had. And it panned out where she was the only one that was able to get make that spear. Which also amazes me because, like, where did that thing end up? They never were really clear. So that's floating around in the world somewhere. So if any of you find it, be careful.
I think it's a great point. And to that point about the wanting to be a witch and really being good at it, and to the earlier point about taking Latin to learn stuff, the idea that the word pharmaca is where we get pharmacy, and that, like, witchcraft, you know, that magic into medicine, science. I love that. Like, it just kind of hit me like, oh, like, I didn't know that's where that derived from. That's really cool. That she's a pharmacist. And she was whipping up some really cool stuff with a mortar and pestle. I love it. I was picturing her at, like, CVS, the CVS that's inside the Walgreens, that's inside that other drugstore, that one, if you know the one I'm talking about. And so I thought that was really cool. So one of the things I always wonder about is if you learned anything from this one. So something else to think about, if you want to raise your hand, anybody, is, you know, did your opinion of mythology or your knowledge of mythology, any of that change? Did you learn something from reading this? I'd love to hear about that. I see George Fischer has his hand up, but I'm wondering if it's George or Kristen. I'm excited to find out. I'm going to unmute and let them decide who wants to speak.
It's me. It's Kristen.
Hi, Kristen.
Can you hear me?
I think your connection was a little spotty. I didn't catch it.
Ready? I am super super excited to be talking. I love. Yeah. Well, no, not happening.
Kristen, I missed that.
I don't think it's happening.
You could try again, or you could try it in the chat. You could at least type out what you want to start with. If the audio doesn't work. Yes.
Okay, perfect. We were trying to cast it to our TV in the basement, and it just is not a good connection. So I love this book. I'm super excited to talk about it. And I loved being able to hear from Cara first, because I remember when we met and talked about the Dutch house, her saying that she had some qualms about it. And her points are excellent, that this book does for a book that is about feminism and giving a voice to an unappreciated and often demonized character from history. She does do a bad job of lifting up other women in general. I would argue that she does a good job by the end of connecting with Penelope and having a respectful, though distant, friendship with Penelope, and having passed on her knowledge of witchcraft to her. So I don't think it's entirely, entirely terrible intersectional feminism with other women, but she certainly doesn't do a great job. To people's points about the your point, Jeff, about her being the runt of the litter with the family, I think one of the points of the book is that there's a giant divide between gods and people, humans. And so to the gods, what matters to them is power. And so she is born and she has a human voice, and she's not as beautiful or as overtly immediately powerful as her other siblings. So she is the runt of the litter. They don't respect her because they don't have power. They're able to make fun of her, boss her around.
She takes it.
And she takes it too, for a long time. And then when she does fight back, she does it in really backstabby ways, like with Scylla and turning Scylla into a monster. And I think, someone else, Kevin, pointed out that only the men were good characters, like Daedalus and some of the others, but I think it was also that most of the characters who were good were human. There were certainly beastly human characters, like the several batches of men that came to the island that she turned into pigs. And one of the things that I was surprised about with that first time that she ended up being raped by the men that she turned into pigs and then burned on the beach was, reading it, I thought that was Ulysses' men. And so to have Madeline Miller say, oh, this was just something that happened and happened all the time. And then to turn that into a theme of the book, how nymphs and other lesser women gods were often they were just being raped all the time. And I recently reread Metamorphoses, and they absolutely were being raped all the time. And so one of the things I did really like about this book was women taking power back. And for Circe, her witchcraft was an art. And so I really liked the character arc for her of coming into her power and her awareness of herself as an artist, and as an artist, as an individual, and not in relation to a man or someone else or anything like that, but just finding it as an artist. And I liked how that could be a metaphor for whatever art you choose to practice in your life, be it painting or writing or singing or anything like that. So I really enjoyed that. I also really appreciated her portrait of early motherhood with a difficult baby, and thought that the idea of someone with godlike powers who still has to suffer through all the agonies that no one ever tells you about with small children was a really compelling and poignant portrait of motherhood.
Thanks, Kristen. George, do you have anything that you want to add while you're here?
Well, thanks, Jeff. Not specifically. I did really enjoy the book. I just finished it recently, and I thought I thought it was really well written. I did really appreciate how Circe grew up during the whole thing, starting out as much more naive, and the Circe who changed Scylla and Glaukos is not the same Circe at the end who falls in, not the same one who falls in love with Odysseus, and then that's still a different Circe from at the very end when she goes off to become mortal. So I thought that the character arc was amazingly well done.
That's a great point. Yeah, I think we do see some real growth with the character. And to your earlier point, Kristen, I too was shocked by, Rachel and I were listening to the audiobook, walking the dog as we do. By the way, Cosmos, 6 years old today, everybody. It's my dog's birthday. Hopefully he'll make an appearance later because it's his birthday. But yeah, and I said, oh, I know who this is, or I know what's about to happen. Like we finally got to the part of the Odyssey, and then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I hope, oh, this is not good. I'm like, oh God, I hope it's like, this is, oh, and then yeah, and then they show up after that, and there's still, you know, some less than ideal stuff, but yeah, I think that was a really important point that was made in a really important that it was shown in such a fashion. And then this talk of, yeah, how the nymphs are just, you know, they're there and they're being taken advantage of in different places. And this idea of, oh, you can't live here alone on this island. Like who actually owns this? Oh, you are? This is all, okay, well then you're completely helpless and we can do whatever we want to you. There was, yeah, some more bad, shocking stuff for Circe, but then, yeah, turning guys into pigs. I mean, she's got the power, so. I see Majel's hand is up. So Majel, I'm unmuting you. Talk to us.
Just a lot of things I'm really agreeing with, especially with the last speaker. Can you hear me okay, Jeff?
Yes.
Okay, good. So my audio's just been funny today, especially with the last two speakers, because I think that's why, I mean, I give this book solid 5 out of 5 stars. To me, it was just like, Circe was such a well-developed character that grew so much over time that I couldn't stop reading. And I think that the pieces that I liked the most about it, you asked a little bit earlier about like, did this make you want to learn more mythology, or what did you know about mythology already, or anything like that? And I had to have open on my phone, I don't know where it was some internet website that like had all of these gods listed, and then whenever somebody would be named, it had it on a Wikipedia, or not a Wikipedia, but another list. And so then I'd like reading about Circe and like, oh, her sister, and I could click that. And I think that's why I loved it a lot, because like I felt like I could understand who the people were in a realer sense, or at least, you know, obviously Madeline Miller's creation of who these, you know, gods are as people, than just like the myths that we hear about them. So like meeting Apollo, or like meeting Mercury, or meeting the mother of the Minotaur, or the Minotaur, like this stuff is so crazy for me to hear today. I'm like, what? You had sex with a cow? Like you had sex with a cow that was put on a beach? This is so fucking weird. And then for Madeline Miller to write it like, this is what happened, and here are the people that did it. It was just like blowing my mind. And so I just loved it because everyone was so real. And I think I really appreciate the conversation about feminism and how feminist is this, and how much of the Bechdel test is really passed fairly. If anything, you know, Circe was such a full character. She had flaws. I love that. She's not perfect. I really like that. And yet she's so strong. Like she goes under the sea to get a stinger. She raises her son by herself, is like, I'm not going to fucking tell Odysseus, no problem. Like, I got this. It's cool. I'm going to be a mom, and that's just me. And so there are a lot of it that I'm still like totally okay with, even if there's pieces I'm like, oh, great, feminism, not so great sometimes. I'm like, oh, but this character that was created, just such a full person, and she was a woman, and I just love that. So absolutely 5 out of 5 stars.
Awesome, thanks. Yeah, I'm sorry. The thing about having sex to make the Minotaur just reminded me of. I put it in the chat. It's an old movie reference from Stripes. When your friend stole that cow, and you tried to make it with the cow, you are a party animal. But you and me together, forget about it. Bill Murray. All right. He just wants to be the big toe when Sergeant Hulka can't be there. So I never thought we'd get from Circe to Stripes, with only one move, but we did it, Majel, with your comment about making it with a cow. So thank you for that.
Jeff.
That's what I was looking for. No, well, awesome. Yeah, I'm glad that you appreciate it. I would hear a familiar character and I would know a little bit and get kind of excited, you know, like, oh, this is going to be the backstory of, I've always wondered about the maze and the Minotaur, like, you know, how they're going to explain that. And that's really cool. And then there were other ones where it was pretty confusing because the names were similar. And luckily it comes with a cast of characters and a glossary. And I was looking things up, you know, and trying to remember. We were especially having a tough time, and it becomes addressed in the book, the similarity between the names of the sons. They're based, and we find out that that Circe did that intentionally, which, because I was like, what? It was at first I was like, who's who? Like, this is something isn't right here. And then she's like, well, I never really thought like I'd, you know, run into that one or it'd be an issue that they would actually be in the same room or on the same island. And now here they are, and they basically have the same name, awkward, you know, sort of thing, which was a great kind of a stalkery thing to do, is to name your kid after, you know, anyway. But I really enjoyed all of the breadth of how much mythology it encompassed and how many characters to learn about. And there's still, I mean, I don't know if you did the audio, it came with the PDF. In the book, in the paperback, does it also come with the same cast of characters and like the glossary and stuff, the very helpful thing? Did it come with that or not? Anyone can speak to that? Or the
ebook did.
The ebook did. Okay.
And I got the audiobook and the ebook to help.
Okay. Excellent. Well, thank you, Majel. I see Andrew has his hand up. Andrew, I'm unmuting you. Can you talk to us?
Sure. So I didn't particularly like the book for a lot of reasons that I think some people did like the book. I think she actually took a really traditional view of mythology. So the main difference between the way we saw things in Circe was the perspective of Circe, who primarily was a minor character in a lot of mythological stories. And that was interesting to see a full different perspective. But really all of the complaints about treatment of women and the fact that gods are not great and all of that kind of thing is just dead on for exactly the way Greek mythology really is. So Miller was really traditional in that respect. You know, the Greeks did not look at their gods in terms of worship and redemption and these types of things. They looked at them as arbitrary, natural catastrophes just waiting to happen. You know, and explaining the human condition in a way in which, like, you know, why do just hurricanes come out of nowhere and destroy everything and those sorts of things? Why do these fates happen to us? So I think it was really traditional, and the reason I didn't particularly like it, I think, is a matter of taste. I just don't like these kind of stories where it's a whole bunch of name dropping. It was just like, yep, there's that character. Yep, there's that character. Yep, there's that character. And I mean, some of the dialogue was just like, all right, pick up the Odyssey and explain exactly what happened when Odysseus came home, right down to when is he stringing the bow and how many people did he kill and these sorts of things. So I didn't particularly enjoy it myself. But I mean, really, if you have a problem with the way that gods, women, those things were portrayed, you really kind of have a problem with the way Greek mythology is, because she was very standard in the way that she presented, I thought, the characters. I didn't think she ventured very far from the storyline or the way that gods and demigods and the humans that are influenced by them were portrayed in the various mythologies. I mean, to me, it sounds like she's a person who loves mythology. She didn't mess with it. She just did it from a different perspective. If you like mythology, you're going to like this book. If you don't like mythology, it's just a long list of names. And that's the way I saw it.
Fair enough. Thanks for sharing that. And I appreciate you still being here for the discussion, even though that wasn't your jam. I got Morgan Woodrow. Morgan, I'm unmuting you. Talk to us.
I was going to say that I really enjoyed this book, basically for what Andrew just said. I mean, picking up this book, I had read Song of Achilles, so I knew Madeline Miller's style. And I was just expecting to read a good summer read that had all of those classical, you know, Greek god themes, and they were there. I mean, there was the power struggles, there was the incest, there was the sex, there was the, you know, betrayal, there was the men trying to become legends. And so I just enjoyed that because I too loved that when I was younger. So it was nice to kind of get into a story like that again. But the theme that I really enjoyed from reading this book was a little bit newer perspective for me with these Greek gods, is just Circe's perception of divinity, mainly her own. She seemed to kind of struggle with either accepting her own divinity or lack thereof, and kind of, you know, condescending or disagreeing or arguing with the other gods in her life and the power that they had from being gods. You know, at one point she's walking down to the depths to get Trigon's weapon and power, and then, you know, the other time she's just totally at peace being this witch on an island in exile, and she accepted that for years. You know, and the way she teaches her own son to go away with Athena, I just thought it was really interesting to see her evolution and how she accepted her own divinity and those of the people around her in the story. So I liked that perspective in this world that we are pretty familiar with otherwise.
Great, thank you, Morgan. And you bring up a point, and I think it's worth examining and asking the group is if we take it that maybe based on Andrew's comments that if Miller really just kind of rewrote or reinterpreted some stories that we already knew or didn't know, but fleshed them out a bit more, what was she trying to say with this different version though? And why write this if she's just going to repeat parts of the Odyssey, which I know there's a lot more to it in here, but I'm wondering, so, you know, the bigger question, and I always ask it, is what do we think Madeline Miller is trying to say here? Why did she even write this then, and Song of Achilles? Other than the fact that she loves these stories, is she just trying to get a new audience for them and make them a little more modern in a way, or did you get something else from it? Is she showing us something, telling us something that we haven't read before in these? I see Cara's got her hand up. My future co-host, it sounds like everyone wants her.
Oh yeah.
To do it.
I'm ready. Two things. One is I kind of want to push back a bit because some people, I mean, I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth. There are so many different versions of all of these myths. Like there's not really like one version. And so to say like, this is the story, this is how the myth goes, it's always bad for like female characters. I just disagree with. Like, I love mythology. I was obsessed with it as a kid. And so I've read, you know, so many different versions of all of these stories about the gods. And like a lot of them do end up very bad for women, but not all of them do. And then I've read some scholarship on this as well, because my obsession continued into college. And if you go back to like some of the very oldest versions, a lot of them were like less critical of women, and their stories didn't necessarily always end, you know, under the power of like a male figure. So I do think that there was a lot more freedom for her to like reinterpret things, like if she had chosen to do that. One example is Ariadne, who like, that is the female character she did like, and who was like nice to her. But Ariadne in this version had like, you know, her worst possible ending in all of the versions of Ariadne's story. Like Ariadne doesn't necessarily have a tragic ending. So I thought, you know, that was like a choice for like this character to like get the shittiest version of her story. The other thing is I want to make a plug for people that love mythology. This is like a version I like a lot, and I experienced it around the same time I read Circe, is the Penelopiad by Margaret Atwood. And it's not about the gods at all. It focuses on Penelope and her story, and it focuses on like these characters that are only mentioned like in one line, which are her handmaidens, and they basically get slaughtered for having like helped her. They get thrown under the bus, and the whole play is about, you know, Penelope and her relationship with them, and kind of the tragedy and in a way her betrayal of them. And it's about power. Like Penelope is a victim in a lot of ways, but Penelope also is, you know, a princess and has a lot of power, and these other nameless women get like this awful ending. And so it's a very feminist retelling, and it's very good. Margaret Atwood is also just an excellent writer. I see Caitlin being like, yes, and she's right. Everyone should read it. It's a novella. It's very short.
Yeah, speaking of Margaret Atwood, this is something I'll post, and I think it'll be for a bigger discussion later, maybe not on any one particular book, but have you heard about a bunch of authors writing a letter about canceling cancel culture? It kind of it's like J.K. Rowling and Margaret Atwood, and there's like 150 people that have put their name on this, and Harper's has published it. It's online right now. It's going to be in the print edition, but it's something about how we're I don't know, we're rushing to judge people maybe too quickly in social media now, and people are getting canceled in cancel culture. Bigger discussion for another time, but Margaret Atwood reminded me of that because she was pretty much the biggest name that I saw other than maybe J.K. Rowling on this list, and I think it's worth reading and looking at and discussing. I see a couple hands up, but I also want to throw this out there. I put this in the chat, and I wish I could find the exact quote, but there are so many different translations, as was mentioned, and there isn't just one version. You know, it's similar to, you know, any ancient text that's, you know, translated from Greek or other languages. There's going to be some variations, and I forget what it was, but Miller was talking about in one of the interviews that one of the translations was she thought wasn't as good because all of the women they only used like one word to describe them, and the word could mean it could mean different things, but it had been kind of applied in a way that they were just kind of like flatly describing women as like, they're just like this. And there was no further like explanation of it. So even back then, and I don't know if anyone else read about this, if they can help me find that. If not, I'll post it later when I find what it is that I'm talking about. Cause I thought it was really interesting point that she made, and how, you know, even as, you know, only like 10 or so years ago, there's still new translations being done of these poems of the Odyssey. And she was saying that, you know, there's a much more modern one from maybe 10, 15 years ago that was translated by a woman that she was using as her basis for her studies. I see Kevin's got his hand back up. I'm unmuting you, Kevin. Talk to us.
Hi. To, I guess, Andrew's point earlier about a lot of it seeming kind of traditional, I think probably my favorite two parts of the book were where it departed from, and also like people talking about asshole gods in the comments, where it departed from that with like Prometheus and Trigon, where they seemed kind of like inscrutable and really principled. And I kind of wish I had seen a lot more of that, because a lot of it is sort of the usual sort of parade of assholes that you might normally see. But it was just those like two moments where it feels like something, I don't know, yeah, something different, something almost deeper, maybe. I don't know.
So we go back to, thanks, Kevin. We go back to these, you know, asshole gods, and what was their point? And I mean, we're supposed to learn something from them, right? So we're not like them, because they're also heavily flawed, right? Like they all have they have their strength, but they have this, you know, like crushing weaknesses that, you know, end up being somewhat their undoing or their family's undoing in a way. And so, you know, is there something that, you know, again, back to what Miller was trying to say here, you know, is she trying to flip the script on this a bit, or change, you know, what we think about some of these gods and what maybe the original authors were trying to say? Caitlin's got her hand up though. I'm unmuting her. Talk to us, Caitlin.
I mean, I think it's interesting, like talking about like how faithful it is to mythology, and whether or not, like, what's the point of having a book if it's faithful to it. And to me, it's like when I read myths, you know, I read tons of Greek mythology as a child or as a young teenager. I was obsessed with, apparently, like just like a lot of other people here. And for me, there was, even though I loved them, there was this remoteness. And even back then, I remember wondering, like, what would it be like to, you know, write a novel based on this. Like these are things that I've like fantasized about over the years. And so for me, like I like the fact that it's faithful. And like, I do think it would have been cool if she had done like a different version with Ariadne. Like I agree that was sort of disappointing, but to me, it's like you get in this interior picture, something that very much felt like the characters always felt remote, because it was like they were told sort of very externally. And then when you read a book like this, suddenly you're in their heads. You get to sort of get a sense of what their daily lives were like. And, you know, I'm a dress historian. Like I wrote my dissertation on clothing. And like, so for me, you know, even thinking about the weaving and thinking about like how they dressed, like I love those vivid details, because you don't get that in Greek mythology. And even the ways that people are depicted, like often in their clothes, it's like, well, you know, the type of costume that the Greeks wore, like chitons, like those probably didn't exist in the period of the gods. And so it's like, I like stories that give me this vivid everyday aspect of what it would have been like to be in another time, another context. And so for me, it's not about like, you know, to rewrite the plot, because there's so much you can do with those plots, and there are so many different versions and interpretations and approaches to it. But it's that you take what was a very different writing style. You know, I remember writing an epic. We all had to write an epic in high school for one of my English classes. And like, there's a particular formula and like a way that you phrase things and way that you think about it. And then when you turn it into a novel, you take the stories and you totally reframe them. And so I love that about this book and books like this.
Awesome. What was your epic about? Do you remember your epic?
Oh God. I'm sure it was about a girl that went on an odyssey of some kind, because that's the sort of thing I would have written about. Probably still the sort of thing I would write about, let's be honest. I haven't changed that much since I was 16. Yeah, we didn't get to write the whole thing. We just sort of wrote a chapter, but I think we did it like in like poetic form. It was it was a really neat assignment, and I always loved challenges like that. So
I wrote some epic short stories. They were tales of the misadventures of Melvin and his nemesis Tubby Butterman, and that was those are some good times back in grade school. All right, but Evelyne, you got your hand up. Talk to us so we don't have to talk about Tubby Butterman and the misadventures of Melvin.
I would love to hear about that at some point. My name is Evelyne. I like what Kevin said about sort of talking about the asshole gods, but sort of, you know, pointing out the manta ray one, Trigon, and Prometheus. I mean, they were two like less asshole gods, but they somehow were able to get out from under that culture, right? The culture of feasting every day, drinking, being very much surface level, gossiping, all of that. You know, Prometheus, you know, sort of sacrificed himself to give fire to mortals, and was I don't know if he was happy to do that, but he stuck by his morals there. And you know, Trigon was just separate from everyone else. And really, I think this whole book, when we talk about like the theme, it's like Circe working to separate herself from the rest of the gods, you know, and it's this whole journey towards finding herself, really, which is just very, you know, classic, almost a coming of age, getting to know yourself, finding out who you are, except it takes her 1,000 years and she has all the time in the world to wait until, you know, she knows herself and the right guy comes along to pull the trigger, you know. I wish we had all the time in the world. But yeah, it's just that whole classic, you know, taking that time to find yourself and know who you are and separating yourself from like maybe the expectations of culture or yeah, you know, a bad upbringing or a bad situation. I really liked, there's a quote in the book, I might have to come back to that or write that in the chat, but it's something along the lines of how you are not what your blood is or where your blood is from. You know, you can sort of separate yourself from that, you know, and fate isn't everything. So
thanks, Evelyne.
Yep.
David Katz. David Katz, you're going to nerd out for us. Talk to us.
Sure. Oh, all the things I could say. What I want to say most, though, you know, Kristen had a line a while back about pharmakeia, and I know that's the right pronunciation because I listened to the Perdita Weeks audiobook, which is wonderful. I just love her narrations. You know, sort of the depictions of the painstaking efforts it took Circe to learn her craft, I think underscores how Madeline Miller treats time, which in hindsight is something that I appreciate was missing from all the other books, you know, classical and present that I've read, probably largely because mortals and divinities can carouse and worse. You kind of forget how meaningful that difference is. In addition to, you know, the pharmakeia, there's the generations of heroes that come and go on Aea. And I think most heartfelt for me, because I have a 3-year-old, is just when she's pregnant with Telegonus and after he's born, just realizing that he will not have the lifespan that she does and will have many vulnerabilities that she doesn't. And there are also some introspective passages. Morgan was talking about how she's thinking about the nature of divinity and in some ways wanting to depart from it. So that, I mean, taken as a whole, is sort of an overlay that now I think about all I know about Greek myth, you know, that subtle sometimes distinction between mortal and divinity is really important.
Thanks, David. So yeah, to your point about pharmakeia, it's funny when you listen to the audiobook, you feel like you do have the definitive pronunciation. You just have to remember how to say it, and then people will debate with you, and sometimes you're just like, I'm just going to play it for you. There it is. They said it. I got to believe them. That's the way it goes. But there's a lot of tough words to pronounce in this book, so I get that. I see we have a lot of people here who haven't had a chance to raise their hand yet. I'm hoping to see some fresh hands still. But other things to think about that might get your hands going is if you missed our icebreaker, tell us what you're the god of or what your witch power would be. Can anyone tell us something? There's been a couple great quotes in the chat. Any other passages that stood out for you? Any other of Madeline Miller's writing? If you didn't enjoy this, for example, would you read if Miller wrote something that wasn't about mythology? Did you find her to be a good writer if you didn't enjoy the Greek stories, the mythology? Anyone on that?
Jeff, this is Rebecca. I can't raise my hand because I'm a co-host. I know. I know.
It's one of the perils. That's why it's so funny, because I can't either. And when I tell people to raise their blue hand, I just have to believe they can find it. Right. I can't tell you exactly because I don't have one. Right.
So I just decided to jump in here.
Thank you. That's perfect.
One, I would be Andromeda because she's the goddess of dreams. And I think dreams are pretty cool. Two, I think that this book is basically, I do think it is a feminist book. And the reason why I do think it is because this is a woman, a goddess, that was formed out of a very patriarchal system. If you look at all of the god stories, both the Greek and the Roman, and pretty much all of them across, I can't speak definitively because I haven't done all the research on that, but it's always the men having all this power, some of the women having some power, but basically the women fight each other rather than against the men because of the system. And that's, I think, was one of the sad parts of this this book, because I thought Circe came as close as I've ever seen to kind of trying to buck the system, but still was very much a product of the system. And so I don't think she had a way to form connections with women in the same way. She just didn't have that in her worldview or in her, you know. So I'm not excusing it. I'm just saying that that's one of the reasons why it didn't bother me so much in this book as in others. And I think she did go a long way. And I do think we need more stories for future generations that will understand and look at these myths and see them being interpreted in different ways. I also think that the gods are pretty much superheroes, and we're reliving all that over again with our whole own superhero madness, craze, whatever. And I would say we have a similar problem, that most of them big guys, the ones who are going to save the world or are going to do the final, are all guys. And the women are going to be critical at key points, and they're going to be nice to look at, and they're going to have, you know, some really kind of unique powers. But in the end, it's the dudes that save. And so I'm hoping that as we continue these conversations, we'll continue to find a multitude of ways to view all of this, and it's a good process. You know, we're all victims of a patriarchal society, and it is not going to be, I don't think, well, probably not in my lifetime. Hopefully, sooner rather than later, that we'll have a chance to see what happens when women really truly amass enough power to make their own mistakes. Obviously, that will become part of it as well. But anyway, so I enjoyed the book very much. I was also kind of a nerd about Greek myths and heroes and all that, but it was something that passed when I stopped liking horses, and I don't know, I felt it was over a teenage phase in my life anyway. So anyway, that's all I got to say for now.
I love it, Rebecca. You just cut me to the core, because first of all, thank you for connecting it to modern day mythology and superheroes. I find, especially with DC Comics, they even have a hardcover called Mythology that is just, it basically kind of delves into the mythology of their characters. But it's totally true. And I like the idea that, yeah, you start off in school and you learn some mythology, and then that's the gateway, and then you get into superheroes or something, and some of us never put it away. We're still on that horse. We're still a teenager that likes horses and big muscle guys with hammers. In the chat, we also had Thor and Asgard brought up too. I see Carolyn's hand is up, and I saw someone else, or maybe a couple hands went away. So don't be afraid. Bring your hand back up. I'm sorry if you had to wait. I know we always have to wait, but Carolyn, I'm going to call on you before you put your hand down. So talk to us, Carolyn.
Yes, hi. So I guess if I had a superpower, I'd be the goddess of making people abide by science. I think that would be my power that I would want them to do. Thank you, yes. But yeah, no, the question that you had asked a couple minutes ago was, do I think Madeline Miller is a good writer? And I think she's phenomenal. I would love to read something else too. I mean, because she was so descriptive. I mean, she just embodied what it might be to be a goddess, because I listened to it too. And she said, you know, I did not walk as mortals do, I walked as a goddess did, and the miles peeled away behind me. And then she was so good. And I would love to read whatever else she wrote. I mean, I think, yeah, she was very, very gifted. And that is what I thought.
Awesome. Well, thanks for welcome back, Carolyn. It's been a while. Good to see you.
Yeah,
you know, I know you've sent your husband a few times from the Overlook Hotel. It's always great to have.
Yeah,
you too,
no,
so.
I just want to be in our dining room, so you know that we're not totally weird. Well, no, we are weird, but at least we're all in the Overlook.
That's okay. Weirdness is accepted here and actually encouraged. Speaking of no pressure, Rebecca, but if you guys haven't seen, Rebecca Moss, who is my co-host tonight, always does a wonderful sketch note for all of our discussions. And she summarizes some of the comments and questions that we had, and there's some nice illustrations. No pressure, but I'm hoping there's at least one really cool, you know, mythological creature in there that you attempt. I'm just saying, I don't know. I'm really excited to see what you do with this one. But that's just me. Release the Kraken, whatever you want. That'd be awesome. All right, Rachel, I'm unmuting you. Talk to us, Rachel Geiser.
First thing is, I guess, talking to animals or anything, but I guess Circe kind of had that. That was pretty awesome. Maybe not taming them, but at least like interacting, getting some thoughts. That would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
For a god power thing. Also, number 2, is Kevin Matson lounging by the pool during our book club here? Because that seems like a very God kind of thing to do, just to like lounge by the pool. It looks
He
like it. That's
wasn't
what I'm just saying.
originally, but if he's gone to the pool now, I love it because he's had a couple. He's like, I made my points. You know, he's raised his hand. He's got called on twice, and I would love it if I cut to him now. He's off a high dive or something. He's just cannonballing into the pool. I don't see him right now. I wanna see now though. If he's
well, that's number 2. But I don't know. I just feel like lounging, maybe being fed some grapes would be perfect for our, like, a God discussion here. But about the book, I don't have a lot of points to make. I'm really enjoying listening to everybody else, but it took me a long time to get into this book. It was close to like 100 pages, because when she was just stuck with her family, I was just like, oh, I was tired of it, and I was tired of her, and so I was glad it like went on, and it stupidly took me a while to figure out it was just going to be like myths coming in and out of her life, and because I guess I don't know as much about Circe as I do some of the other myths that I've read. So that was good. But, you know, I was really expecting her siblings to come back, and maybe because that's not actually part of the myths out there that never happened. But I thought that was kind of a hole in the book where it just dropped that thread, like her being really close to her youngest brother, and just like a couple sentences, like we didn't hear what happened to Medea for so long, and I don't know Medea's story. I feel like I thought I knew some myths, and apparently I do not, and that was a little eye-opening. But so I was just like, you know, it was just like this one-off thing later. Oh yeah, whatever happened to her? And I'm like, why would you find out about that earlier? You know, but I don't know. I just I was really hoping to hear more about her siblings a little bit, but I don't know. That would be something that, and I'm sure because since it wasn't a myth and they didn't interact anymore, maybe that's why we didn't get that. But
well, thank you. I think you know, what did you think of how she returns to Scylla, and you know, and kind of, well, what is she turns her to stone, right? So she's like the creature, but she's like frozen in stone. I thought she was going to maybe try to turn her back again or something. I don't know. But yeah, there's a little.
Is that like her brother who's named after her mom, like Persis? Is that how you say it for him? I don't know, but like he's like, oh hey, he's got like some zombies going on over there. Is that a myth that I don't know about? And so like, if you knew myths, you know exactly what she was referring to there. But I'm just like, dude, I want to find out what he's doing, and I want to like read her like ancient Roman zombies. That would be really cool. But
well, I'm sure there's other. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't profess to know a lot of it. A lot of it is like kind of familiar, and you knew like the broad strokes of it. And then it was interesting to hear. I don't know whether she made some of it up or it was just stuff that I didn't know yet. But it did make me want to read more and look up more of it, which I think is good. It's a good sign that I was interested in it. But by the way, I thought we were talking about the other Kevin. So Kevin Mattson hasn't spoken, and he does appear to be at a pool. He's either at a pool or a hospital. That was the first glance. I was worried that he was in a hospital bed with the messages behind him, but he's either at a pool or a place with a lot of warnings about where he's sitting. So if Kevin Mattson wants to talk, great. It's Kevin Thompson who I knew was not at the pool and who got some points in. But Mattson, yeah, he's just lounging right now. He's probably on mute. He's got like a Mai Tai. If he's allowed to have glass in the pool area, I don't know. But yeah, so I mean, I'm just trying to egg him on to get his blue hand up right now. So we'll see if it happens or not. But anyone else want to tell us, maybe something that they really liked about it that stood out for them or didn't like? I mean, something, back to your takeaway for it. Like, you took the time, you read this, and whether you liked it or not, what are you taking away from this? Again, anyone? If not, we'll move on to the next one. Did you guys see that our next meeting is in 2 weeks, and it is Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. This one might be divisive also. I think I've heard from some people that love it and some people that hate it. I was blown away by Normal People, and so I said, let's try this one. I was blown away by the Hulu series, Normal People, I should say. I haven't read Normal People yet, but I got it, and I'm going to read it now because I liked Conversations with Friends. So that is our next one. And then I also have posted a list of books through November And then one really, for me personally, very exciting piece of news that just came out today that I shared is that Ernest Cline has written a sequel to Ready Player One called Ready Player Two, and it comes out November 24th. I would love to end 2020 in December by talking about Ready Player Two. Hope it's good. It's a sequel to the book, not to the movie. And, you know, Ready Player One has the rare distinction of being the only book that Books and Bars, to my knowledge, has covered twice. And it was a personal request when we did a special event at Dangerous Man Brewing for the second time. The first time we did it was back at Amsterdam, and we had video games set up from the 80s, and we played video games. And I think we were also Bryant Lake Bowler Astor at the time for that one. But yeah, Ready Player Two, November 24th. So I'm always looking for new books that are coming out. I'm excited that you guys are willing to not wait for the paperback on certain ones and move along with us with this 2 times a month. So Kevin Matson's got his hand up. He's come up from the water from underneath. He was submerged this whole time. I'm unmuting him because I can't wait to hear what he has to say at the pool.
So I have to be honest, Jeff, I did not finish this book. I tried to listen to it. And it was the characters were there was too much going on. I did not have the chart. I didn't look up the chart. I did not finish it. I did like it. I started actually, so I got the hard copy too. And I got the hard copy to read, but I started from page 1 again to reread it. So I did not finish it. So I have not had much to say. I truly appreciate the shout out. You guys are nice. It is a beautiful day to be at the pool. It is lovely out here. I am having a cocktail. It is in a can. It is not in glass. And thank you for the shout out. I will definitely be on board again next month. So thank you.
Kevin, is your phone or device waterproof in any way or water resistant?
You guys want me to get in the pool?
I do. I want you to jump in the pool. This is awesome.
But thank you.
Are you on vacation, or is that where you live?
I'm not. I live in a condo. I live in a small condo in St. Louis Park. I am not on vacation, but I would take time out of my vacation for Books and Bars. 100%.
Awesome.
I would take time out of my schedule for you, Jeff, for sure.
Well, thanks, Kevin. I hope you like one of the next books better. But thank you for still joining us, even from the pool. You look like you are doing this right. I'm proud of you. That's awesome. What else haven't we talked about with Circe tonight? You guys read it? There's something that you want to talk about? You're thinking about raising your hand or putting it in the chat. Maybe it's in the chat and someone else has read it, because I can't. Rebecca's got something for me.
Well, this is from the chat, and it was a discussion that I think Heidi brought up, and that was one of the things that was done so well was how boring it can be to be immortal, and how having all that time is really a drain. And we've read a lot of other books that have talked about the death gives meaning to life, and so and it seems to be a problem for immortals as well. So and Heidi, if you want to say, make your point directly, I'm happy to zip.
Yeah, welcome back, Heidi. Would love to hear from you if you want to talk. Otherwise, thanks for joining in on the text chat tonight. Good to see you again. Feel free to chime in. Anyone else? Yeah. To your point, though, Rebecca, about that, and our string of books that are all about you don't want to relive the same life or the same day over and over because it has no meaning. And and I just saw that commercial again for the that new movie that I told you guys about, Palm Springs. It's a new take on Groundhog Day. Like, we need another one, but it looks funny. I'm gonna watch it. It's with Andy Samberg and Christina Milioti. It's on Hulu this weekend, so check it out. Palm Springs. If you can handle more Groundhog Day, from my recommendations. Anyone else on any other deities or characters in this book that we haven't talked about? Other than Circe, are there other characters that stood out to you that you felt were pretty well fleshed out that think are worth discussing? Or I see Rachel Kamin's got her hand up. Rachel, I'm unmuting you. Talk to us. Rachel? I'm asking to unmute you, Rachel. I think you have to unmute it.
There, how's that?
That's great.
Okay.
Rachel,
so
are you by our pool? We don't have one.
Yeah, no, I am weeding right now as I listen. So you can see the dirt on my fingertips.
I could get an aerial shot of this right now if I wanted to.
Yeah. So I just wanted, when Rebecca mentioned the tediousness of life, of immortality, it reminded me of the end of the TV series The Good Place, and when they all have to eventually, they can live forever, but at some point there's sort of, you feel like you're done. You've done everything. You've accomplished everything you wanted to accomplish, and so they move on. So anyway, that reminded me of sort of the ending of this book. Like immortality wasn't satisfying anymore, and she chose a different path.
Rachel, thank you so much for bringing that up, because you will remember when I had kind of like one of my, oh my gosh, this is so cool, eureka moments. And I talked to you about it, and I'm not sure if you were totally on board with it, but I said, you know what? For some reason, the ending of Circe reminded me of the end of the movie Raising Arizona by the Cohn brothers.
Oh, yeah.
And then I thought, that's the weirdest thing that I got from Circe to Raising Arizona, their 1987 movie with Nick Cage stealing a box of Huggies and they kidnap a baby. If you haven't seen it, it's one of the funniest Coen Brothers films. And then I thought about it and said, actually, it's not that weird, because the Coen Brothers essentially remade the Odyssey in Oh Brother, Where Art Thou? So I was like, wait a minute, is there some way that even, I don't know, like there's some kind of like, could Madeline Miller have been inspired by the Coen brothers in a way? Because the ending was the same idea. It's Circe is saying what may or may not happen. At least this is the way I took it. And I want to believe that the way she talked it out is what happened, but I think it's all like, I hope this happens, and if I drink this is what I hope is going to happen, and this is what her life could be like after this, with the idea of the kid and the husband and all of that, the family and everyone together. Loved it. And that is the end of Raising Arizona. Nick Cage and Holly Hunter are trying to have kids. They can't have kids, so they kidnap a baby, and then they realize, well, you know what, that wasn't the right thing to do. They give them back. And Nick Cage is dreaming at the end, like, someday I see us, having kids, and he kind of imagines the two of them in like a happier life with a family and kids, and it's going to happen for them. And that's the end. And I was like, oh my God, that is so cool, because if you didn't already know, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou is basically a retelling of the Odyssey, just another great Coen Brothers movie. But Evelyne's got her hand up now. Thanks, Rachel. I'm unmuting Evelyne now. Talk to us, Evelyne.
Hi, I just wanted, you reminded me of when you were talking about her imagining her life at the end before she drank the potion. I like to think, I know Peter, he left, but I think he was talking about how he wanted to talk about the ending, whether she actually drinks the potion or not. I think, doesn't her dad say, Helios at one point somebody says that the two people, Skyla and the fisherman that she fed that flower to, ended up being kind of what she wanted them to be, not really their true selves. But like her version of what she thought their true selves were.
Okay, so wait a minute. So are you saying that the potion, it doesn't turn them into their true selves, but instead it turned them into what they wanted to be?
What Circe wanted deemed as their true selves.
Okay, so Circe had control over it, whereas subliminal, right, she actually wanted that to happen. So that's what happened, as opposed to, see, okay, that's interesting. So then in both of those scenarios, she would probably get that happy ending though.
Right.
Yeah, because I look at it as, okay, so if this is what she truly is then, you know, because she wants it so bad and she's grown as a character that she's going to get this ending. But yeah, whether that's one of her powers, that she was actually able to strongly influence it. And so then she probably is going to get it exactly as she imagined.
I like to think so. Yeah, I hope so.
Yeah. Cool. Very cool. That spark anything for anyone else? Anyone else have anything to chime in? Is there anything else in the chat that you guys saw that you would love to hear the larger group discuss? So someone had asked where these are archived. I had a technical difficulty last time and I just posted the chat. So a special highlight to the chat was posted with the sketch note on Facebook. Usually what I do is I edit this video and I post a video of our discussion. I'm going to try this time to get the video and the chat for everyone together, along with the sketch note, of course, which Rebecca always shares first, and I love to reshare. So I hope that answers that one. Is there anyone else that maybe was in the chat that saw something they would love to hear us wrestle with here, the larger group? If not, anything that you want to hear us talk about Circe before we go? We're good on time tonight, so unless you guys got to jump in the pool, I totally get it. Don't want to keep you. July 22nd, we're back here, and check it out. I hope you like it. I think it'll be a good discussion, Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney. And then I am currently into Such a Fun Age by Kylie Reed, which I'm really excited to talk to you guys about. I think it's going to be great. I knew nothing. I knew very little going into it, and there's some good surprises in it. So it's a good read. I think you guys are going to like that one. Educated is end of August. I read that already. That's going to be a good discussion. Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead for September 9th. And then we have Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers for September 23rd. So lots of great stuff. And follow us on booksandbars.com. We're on Facebook. We have Instagram, Books and Bars, where you can see pictures of my dog a lot of the time. I took an aerial shot from the top of the house here to my wife weeding and my dog out there, to give you an example, but I didn't pick it up and turn it around. So maybe I'll just share that for fun with you guys too. So thanks in advance for your tips and for supporting our sponsors, the Friends of the St. Paul Library. Be sure to download the book and look for the discussion on that one. Subtext and Moon Palace will be reopening soon. I think Subtext is already this week or next week. And I'm not sure exactly Moon Palace, how they're doing. I know they're still shipping some stuff, but they took a little bit of a break too. So thanks again, you guys. I always enjoy this. This is one of the highlights of COVID-19 for me. And I look forward to talking to you guys in a couple of weeks. Kevin, I see you at the pool. Why don't you do a cannonball for us and then we'll go. All right, guys. Good night. Talk to you in a couple of weeks. Thanks.